After 100 nannies faced humiliation, one surprising act of kindness changed everything forever. Emily trudged down the cracked sidewalks of the suburban neighborhood in Ohio, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows. Her dreams of academic recognition felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by yet another dismissal. She was now just another nameless face in a world quick to forget. Each rejection reverberated through her, a familiar weight that pulled her down. Was she ever more than a mere nanny, a warm body to fill a gap for families who saw her as inadequate? Her heart raced as she replayed the conversation that had shattered her for the 100th time. "We need someone with more experience, someone who understands our lifestyle," they'd said, their words dripping with entitlement. With every step, Emily grapples with her own worth, wanting to scream at the sky, her mind spun with unease. "You're a failure," it whispered. "No one wants you." A shiver ran through her as she recalled the laughter of the children who adored her, only to be dismissed by their parents as unqualified. Would she ever break free from this cycle? Or was she destined to scrape by, forever living in the shadows of their privileged lives? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Her pace faltered as a stare settled in. She'd watched others flourish while she felt like a ghost haunting the outskirts, invisibly yearning for a break. Just then she noticed Ruth, the elderly neighbor, tending to her garden. Ruth's gentle smile and twinkling eyes had often provided a small comfort at the end of a long day, but today even the thought of cherishing that connection felt burdensome. Emily hesitated before marching past. She didn't want the pity. "Emily," Ruth's voice cut through her haze. The warmth was palpable, drawing her in despite her reluctance. The invitation to join her for tea felt like a compass in a storm. "Come on, dear, just the two of us." As they sat together, steam swirling from their cups, Emily felt the familiar ache of inadequacy tighten around her chest. She had once longed for recognition in academia, the applause of peers, the joy of inspiring minds. Now she was merely snatching crumbs from the table of the privileged, her dreams smothered under layers of self-doubt. Ruth listened, a beacon of understanding, yet the guilt rose again.
Here she was, spilling her scraps over the table of a woman who had devoted her life to the children Emily couldn't seem to reach. With every shared story, Ruth's unwavering support shone through, bolstering Emily's confidence, igniting the spark of her old ambitions. But just as their bond strengthened, news of Ruth's declining health arrived, plunging Emily into darkness. The relentless ticking of the clock filled her with dread. What would become of her newfound purpose? Would Ruth's weakness be the end of Emily's revival? In a heartbeat, the attic became a realm that could redefine her existence. Objects scattered, dusty books, forgotten memories, an old crumbling schoolhouse that promised to be a sanctuary for the overlooked kids in their community. What if this was her path? A chance to breathe life into every rejection she'd faced, to create something that mattered. But the road ahead flooded Emily with anxiety. She could return to the affluent circles, beg for crumbs, or embrace this legacy that could honor Ruth while serving those who needed her brilliance. A choice hung over her, the echo of her past failures whispering in her ear, yet Ruth's unwavering belief lit a flicker of hope. Just as she was ready to take that step, a message blared on her phone, shaking her to her core. Could the revelations be more than just unsettling? Would they unravel everything she was about to fight for? The shadows whispered again, as Emily stood at the precipice of her life, fighting against both the world outside and the turmoil within. Emily hesitated, her thumb hovering over the notification on her phone. The weight of uncertainty pressed down on her, yet beneath it was a surge of defiance. Perhaps the revelation in that message was the catalyst she needed. She had faced doors slamming shut one after another, but maybe this was an opportunity, a new path to traverse. Taking a deep breath, she opened the message. The screen lit her face in a harsh glow, revealing an invitation to a community meeting on youth empowerment. The organizer, a fierce advocate for change, had sparked movements in other neighborhoods, inspiring generations. A part of her recoiled, reminding her of her past.
Attending such events hadn't resulted in anything for her before. They only amplified her feelings of inadequacy. But as she looked up and gazed at the worn attic's wooden beams, the forgotten sanctuary, something deep within stirred. Did she have the power to turn the tides within herself? The message promised a gathering of individuals who had faced challenges similar to hers, people who fought against their own demons, just as she had been doing. The thought morphed into a vivid image in her mind, a room full of voices, each battling their narrative, sharing their truths. For once, she would be among those seeking to transform pain into purpose, rather than hiding behind the shadows of rejection. Her heart raced as she made the decision.
With a newfound determination, Emily began drafting her thoughts for the meeting. She had spent years focused on what she regarded as failures, but tonight she would present her own story. The realization sparked an energy she had yet to tap into. It was the start of claiming her own voice, despite the internal battle brewing within. As she realized the power of vulnerability, her mind drifted back to Ruth. The elderly neighbor had always spoken of building resilience in others, of pushing through fears. Emily felt that same resilience blooming in her. Perhaps by sharing her struggles, she could not only find clarity for herself, but also inspire the children she hoped to help in that old schoolhouse. Her story needed to be heard, and it began with this meeting. The evening air buzzed with anticipation as she prepared to leave her house, determination etched in her face. But then, shadows clouded her thoughts again. What if no one listened? What if they dismissed her as they had before? No, she whispered, shaking her head as if to dispel the lingering doubt. She couldn't afford to let fear define her journey. Even if they didn't resonate with her story, she would still have taken the leap. That in itself was a victory. The drive to the community center felt surreal, a moment suspended in timeliness. She could almost hear every heartbeat, a reminder that she was alive and capable. Arriving at the venue, the vibrant chatter enveloped her, yet she stood still for a moment outside. Emily felt a ripple of terror intertwined with hope. With a steadying breath, she walked through the doors, determination igniting each step. Yet just as she did, a familiar face caught her gaze, the affluent mother who had rejected her interview weeks before. The amused look on her face sent a chill through Emily, igniting a swell of fear again. Would she allow this moment to fracture her resolve? At that instant, Emily understood the power that lay in choosing how to respond. She would not be cast aside like before. This was her moment of reclaiming her narrative. The room buzzed with potential, yet her past loomed like an unwanted shadow. Realizing that this confrontation was necessary, Emily squared her shoulders, ready to confront the ghosts of her past, even as they attempted to have the final say. Would she face her fears with the conviction she had just discovered? The answer was brewing in her chest, pushing her to step forward. The echo of her voice awaited, yet the moment hung precariously on the edge of transformation. Would she rise to the occasion, ready to battle the past head-on? The stakes had never been so high, but a stirring within also urged her on. This could be the defining moment she had been searching for all along. All she had to do was begin. Emily felt a buzz of energy around her, a chaotic symphony of voices intertwined with laughter. And yet she stood apart, anxiety gripping her insides like a vice.
The familiar woman from her past, the one who had cream-skinned confidence laced with judgment, lingered nearby, reinforcing all her insecurities. She clutched her notes tighter, the paper crinkling beneath her fingers, a lighthouse in the storm of her uncertainty. Taking another steadying breath, she moved toward the circle of chairs, her heart hammering in her chest. The urge to turn and leave gnawed at her resolve. What was she doing here? Would they even care about a narrative as fragmented as hers? But amidst that anxiety, a thread of strength began to weave itself through her thoughts, reminding her of why she had come. As others began to share their stories, each voice resonated with raw honesty. Emily listened, absorbed their struggles as if they were pieces of a jigsaw puzzle, slowly aligning into the picture of her own experience. It was simultaneously grounding and liberating, a reminder that vulnerability had always been a silent ally. Finally, when it was her turn, she stood. The tremble in her legs was palpable, but she squared her shoulders, drawing on that newfound conviction. She shared her journey, her defeats, her desire to be more than a reflection of others, and the oppressive weight of feeling underestimated. As she poured her heart out, a warm breeze of empathy enveloped the room, and she saw glimmers of connection in the eyes of strangers. They were not dismissive, they were listening. When she concluded, a surprising wave of applause surged through the assembly.
For a fleeting moment, she felt weightless, as if shedding years of criticism and self-doubt. But the applause quickly faded into a deafening silence as she made eye contact with the affluent mother again, a world of judgment rushing back. Yet it didn't hurt as much anymore. A murmur of voices broke the tension, and someone reached out. A young woman, no older than 20, approached her, eyes glistening with gratitude. "Thank you for sharing," she said, her voice steady. "I felt the same way, trapped in expectations. You just gave me the courage to think differently." Emily felt her heart swell. The ripple effect of her honesty reached far beyond her expectations, penetrating that barrier of isolation she had built. It was at that moment she realized the true power of her narrative. What she had always viewed as a series of failures could now be a lifeline for others. That connection sparked something deep inside her, a yearning to create spaces for others to express their truths, a calling to teach them that their voices mattered. Hadn't Ruth urged her to be that change? A plan began to form. Images of workshops and mentorship floated through her mind. The community center could be her stage, where she could foster resilience in the next generation. However, just as the thrill of new possibilities rushed through, doubt crept back in. Was this desire a mere fantasy?
And what if stepping into this role meant confronting even harsher judgments from the affluent mother or the others who occupied seats of privilege? Emily grappled with the fear of stepping from the shadows and carving a space for herself as a leader. Yet the softness in the young woman's eyes reminded her that growth often sprouts from discomfort. This realization ignited a fire within her, a commitment to pursue this dream despite the obstacles that lay ahead. For every voice silenced by doubt, there could be her counter-narrative, echoing with empathy and empowerment. The meeting concluded, but Emily remained rooted in place. Her newfound purpose sparked a series of questions that demanded answers. What form would this new endeavor take? Could she maintain the will to withstand potential ridicule from those who might not understand her mission? As she left the hall, the air felt different, electric. The journey was far from over. It had merely taken a new direction. Each step away from the gathering felt like stepping into an unknown world, full of potential, and she reveled in the uncertainty. What would the next chapter of her life bring? And how would she confront the shadows of doubt that still lingered? The answers awaited her on the path ahead, urging her onward into the depths of her calling, ready to unearth her place in this expansive, challenging world. The days following the gathering felt like a whirlwind. Thoughts spun like autumn leaves caught in a breeze. Emily returned to her daily routines, but the weight of her experience lingered, chiseling away at her old fears. Rather than retreating into her shell of self-doubt, she found herself replaying the young woman's words in her mind. "You gave me the courage to think differently." Those words echoed with each passing hour, a reminder that her narrative had not come full circle. It was just beginning. Fueled by that spark of connection, Emily began to sketch out a plan for workshops. She filled pages with ideas for themes, activities, and potential guest speakers, those who had transformed their own stories. Yet intermingled with enthusiasm was a persistent hesitation. Who would come? Did she truly possess the skills to lead? The affluent woman from the gathering haunted her thoughts, reminding her of everything she feared would stop her. After several nights of restless contemplation, Emily decided to take action. Her first step was to reach out to Ruth, her mentor, who had always been an anchor in turbulent waters. The moment she dialed Ruth's number, anxiety surged through her body. What if Ruth dismissed her ideas as folly? What if she laughed at the notion of Emily becoming a facilitator? "Emily?" Ruth's warm voice broke through the tension of her thoughts. Emily could practically hear the gentle encouragement in her tone. "I have an idea," she began, her voice faltering slightly. "I want to create workshops for people to share their stories, help others find their voices." "But I'm scared, Ruth. What if no one comes? What if I can't do this?" A pause followed, stretching taut like a tightrope. "Fear is part of the journey, Emily. It can paralyze or motivate you. What's it going to be?" "It needs to motivate me," she admitted, feeling the tide of her determination shifting. "I want to help others, create a safe space for them, like we talked about." "There's something vital you need to remember. Leadership doesn't mean having all the answers. It means guiding others to discover their own truths," Ruth replied.
You've begun that journey by sharing your story. Now it's time to expand that circle. With Ruth's words wrapping around her like a protective cloak, Emily started crafting proposals for local community centers, putting her thoughts into concise outlines. Each structured proposal pulled her further from the debilitating doubt that had held her captive for so long. As she wrote, she could visualize people gathering, forming connections, vulnerabilities expanding into a network of trust. Yet, as progress emerged, so did new waves of anxiety. The fear of judgment encroached. Would those in privileged circles take her seriously? Would they see her as merely an aspiration, or would they turn their backs on her efforts? With every thought of their judgment, she felt herself retracting. Determination surged again. She refused to allow that doubt to dampen her vision. Her hands shook as she printed her proposals, but each physical copy felt like a step into the realm of possibility. Emily resolved to contact potential partners who could help bring her initiative to life, but the memory of the affluent woman's derisive demeanor still lurked ominously as she pressed forward. Later, during one of her walks for clarity, she encountered the park where she used to sketch plans of her future. Gazing at the sprawling trees and children playing, a flicker of an idea ignited. What if she organized a public reading event, inviting people to share snippets of their journeys? It felt risky yet thrilling, a test of her own resolve and faith in the community. Before she could question herself again, Emily reached for her phone. Her fingers trembled but moved with determination, sending out a call for participants and collaborators. Would they accept her invitation? Would they blink at her naivety or embrace her vision? The stakes were high, and sweat pooled at her brow as she pondered the possible outcomes. As her vision transformed into tangible actions, Emily couldn't shake the thought of the affluent woman's judgment looming like a cloud, but now she could feel the thrust of her purpose breaking against it. The road ahead unfurled before her, reflecting both opportunity and anxiety in its grim uncertainty. Within her blossomed an unshakable commitment to confront every looming doubt, every potential hurdle. The moment of truth was blooming like a flower demanding light, her voice, her story, ready to be heard.
Yet, with every tentative step forward, one question remained. As she prepared for the potential backlash and the reality of public scrutiny loomed, would she be able to remain steadfast and authentic in the face of such criticism? The weight of uncertainty pressed heavily on Emily as she watched the number of interested participants gradually climb and then plateau. Each notification on her phone brought a fleeting thrill, quickly eclipsed by doubt. With the date of her public reading fast approaching, the need to validate her vision loomed large, steadily feeding her anxiety. What if only a handful of people showed up? What if the atmosphere turned awkward, filled with uncomfortable silences? The affluent woman's dismissive gaze drifted back into her thoughts like a specter, and Emily fought against the notion that she could be perceived as a failed project. After a night fraught with anxiety, she sought refuge in her journal. Words poured onto pages as she wrestled with her nerves. This wasn't just about her anymore. It represented a chance for others to find their voice, to connect in ways she once thought impossible. She caught herself using the word failure repeatedly, but after several breaths, she scratched it out, replacing it with learning experience. A subtle shift, yet it marked a crucial step in her personal evolution. To counteract her swirling thoughts, Emily decided to dive deeper into her preparation. She called upon Ruth again, this time inviting her to the reading as a supportive presence. During their conversation, Emily instinctively sought affirmation, a validation of her worthiness. Will they laugh? Will they think I'm unqualified? The doubts spilled forth, unfiltered. Those thoughts are distractions, Emily, Ruth said softly. Your value as a facilitator lies in your willingness to create an environment of vulnerability. Don't confuse experience with ability. Remember, it's about connection, not perfection. Those words wrapped around her heart like a warm embrace. Every time Emily felt herself slipping into self-doubt, she pictured Ruth's calm assurance. She began to plan for the unexpected, preparing for the possibility of silence or disagreement, scenarios that had once terrified her. What if, instead of shutting down, she proposed exercises or reflections to spark engagement? As the day approached, her internal narrative began to shift profoundly. She still caught herself second-guessing, but she also felt an exhilarating sense of agency. With each passing hour, instead of shrinking, her ideas blossomed. She began reaching out to local writers and thinkers, inviting them to contribute their insights. Your story matters, she would say with newfound confidence, believing it with every fiber of her being. A few days later, as she stood at the edge of the park where she had envisioned the reading, Emily felt an electric pulse of energy coursing through her. The trees above seemed to nod in encouragement, every rustling leaf a reminder that growth often required pushing against the elements. She took a deep breath, lacing her fingers together as she mentally reaffirmed her purpose. Then the moment arrived. Participants began to filter in, their faces a tapestry of nervous excitement. Emily greeted them at the entrance, trying to match their energy while internally battling the residual fear of judgment. A palpable sense of camaraderie filled the air, creating an unexpected warmth amidst the anxiety. Emily noticed a young girl fidgeting near the back. She recognized that look, the hesitant hopefulness, the fear of stepping into the light. It reminded her of herself only a few weeks earlier. Instead of feigning confidence, she chose vulnerability as her strength. "I'm so glad you're here," she said softly, her heart racing. "We're all nervous. Just know whatever happens today, it's okay." As the readings began, Emily shared her own experiences, letting her voice tremble with authenticity. The audience leaned in, encouraging murmurs and nods filled the space. Each story shared crafted a canvas of connection. She could see expressions shifting, allowing the vulnerability to envelop them. The room thrummed with an unspoken understanding. Perhaps the affluent woman's judgment would eventually arrive, but in that moment, judgment was eclipsed by shared humanity. As Emily introduced the next reader, she caught a glimpse of the girl smiling through tears, her previous apprehension melting away. Later, as the event drew to a close, Emily looked around the circle of faces, each one illuminated by the desire for expression. She realized this journey had less to do with her fears and everything to do with the impact of sharing. Feeling buoyed by this realization, Emily stood ready to take deeper risks, knowing this connection would only strengthen her resolve. But lurking beneath her newfound confidence was a tight knot of impending tension. What would happen when she faced her to-do list of follow-ups and the definite fallout of her choices? Would the affluent woman's shadow still linger, or had she truly begun to erase her hold on Emily's internal landscape? As the event came to an end, that question hung heavy in the air. What would be her next move? Emily awoke the next morning, the glow of her triumphant reading still fresh in her mind. However, the overhang of her unresolved feelings lingered like an unshakable morning fog. She had felt powerful in those moments, her vulnerability igniting something within her audience. Yet beneath this new awareness, the path onward felt jagged and uncertain. She sat cross-legged in her living room, surrounded by the remnants of hastily written notes and literary inspirations. The to-do list nagged at her like an uninvited guest, persistent and demanding. Follow-ups, thank you messages, ideas for her next reading. They all felt overwhelming, as if each task carried the weight of her worthiness. She forced herself to breathe deeply, channeling the mantra Ruth had gifted her. It's about connection, not perfection. Taking her journal into her lap, Emily penned a note to herself. Each follow-up represents growth. Every connection is an opportunity. The ink flowed easily, a contrast to the block she had felt before. Bite-sized accomplishments felt more digestible than all-encompassing self-judgments. The stark transition from anxiety to action was enlightening. In that moment, Emily confronted her compulsion to trap herself within her own narratives of inadequacy. Her phone buzzed, a gentle intrusion that threatened her focus. It was a message from one of the participants, a woman named Julia, who had shared a poignant story about her struggle for acceptance through art. "Thank you, Emily," it read. "Your words inspired me to reconnect with my creativity. I'm considering holding an exhibition." Emily felt a swell of pride. This was the connection she craved to cultivate. Reaching out to Julia felt like a natural extension of their shared moment, and she typed a heartfelt reply. As she put down her phone, her mind began assembling images of the affluent woman who had cast doubt on her potential. The illusion of that judgmental stare seemed to fade, and she felt a strange sense of liberty. What if she transformed that energy into something productive? What if she invited her doubter instead of avoiding her, turning a potential confrontation into a learning opportunity? Her inclination towards confrontation challenged her. The affluent woman represented a stereotype of success Emily had always battled against, one that echoed her fears of inadequacy. Yet the woman's perspective might provide invaluable insight into her own growth. Emily sprang into action, drafting an invitation along the lines of, "I'd love to share a conversation about creativity and vulnerability on Saturday, hoping we might find common ground." She stared at the words for several moments, heart racing at the audacity. It was exhilarating. The act of reaching out felt like grasping the reins of her anxiety instead of allowing it to gallop unchecked. But lurking in the back of her mind was the trepidation that this encounter could also be a disaster, a painful reminder of her insecurities. What if the woman dismissed her again?
What if their conversation devolved into judgment? The thought paralyzed her momentarily, but then she recalled that fragile young girl from the reading, her tears turning to smiles through shared vulnerability. This was about sharing perspectives, not winning or losing. With determination intensifying, Emily hit send. A thrilling pulse coursed through her as she allowed herself to believe in the possibility. The day drifted into twilight, and the weight of her decisions loomed large. As the sky transitioned to hues of orange and purple, she reflected.
Would she emerge from this experience with renewed strength, or would it challenge her burgeoning belief in herself? Each moment felt pivotal, brimming with uncertainty. The challenge was clear. She was preparing to confront her reflection in the form of the affluent woman. That conversation could redefine her path, and the outcome remained tantalizingly unpredictable. Her heart raced as she prepared for the meeting. Little did she know, the affluent woman might hold more insight than mere judgment. Possibilities lingered that could either forge her confidence or challenge everything she had built. The question pulsing through her: would she rise to meet the challenge, or could this venture precipitate her greatest fears? The clock ticked steadily. Anticipation hung in the air, the next chapter of her growth awaiting exploration. Emily paced her living room, the ticking clock amplifying her anxiety. Saturday loomed in her mind like a monstrous shadow, a looming confrontation with the affluent woman who had once catalyzed feelings of inadequacy deep within her. But as the hours passed, something shifted. Each step became less about dread and more about determination. The invitations she had sent out compelled her to stand firm, not as a victim, but as a participant in her own narrative. She pulled out her journal again and began to write. How can I transform fear into understanding? The question echoed internally, prompting an unexpected introspection. Each word she penned ignited memories of the participants from her recent reading, each story a reminder of the strength found in vulnerability. Could she invite that energy into her upcoming conversation? With renewed clarity, Emily flipped through her notes, collecting topics that resonated within her. Creativity, vulnerability, and connection, the very same threads that bound her to her audience just days earlier. The affluent woman represented much more than judgment. She encapsulated an opportunity for dialogue. The prospect of learning from someone who displayed an opposite experience intrigued Emily, piquing her curiosity. The night before their meeting, she fell asleep with the questions swirling in her mind. What could she uncover about herself through this interaction? What hidden truths would they unravel during their discussion? Anxiety stirred her awake early, a weight threatening to crush her resolve. Emily bolted upright, prospects of the day flooding her thoughts. She focused on her breathing, pulling in deep breaths to mitigate the adrenaline surging through her veins. This is about connection, she whispered to herself, recalling Ruth's mantra. It was time to embrace the unpredictability of the moment. Arriving at the cafe, she scanned the open space, her heart racing with a mix of excitement and trepidation. She spotted the woman seated at a corner table, cloaked in an air of confidence and poise.
As Emily approached, she felt the gravity of expectation settle heavily around her shoulders. "Hi, I'm Emily," she managed, extending her hand. The woman looked up, her gaze navigating the vulnerability present beneath Emily's bravado. "Good to meet you. I've been curious about this conversation," the woman replied, her voice warm, though tinged with the careful deliberation of someone wary. They sat, and an unspoken tension filled the air. It hung there, a delicate thread connecting them, both acutely aware of the walls they needed to dismantle. Emily took a breath, determined to create a space of honesty. "I wanted to talk about creativity and the ways our experiences shape us, especially how you expressed your views at my reading. Could we start there?" The affluent woman leaned back, contemplating the request, her brows furrowing in thought. "It's not uncommon for a critique to be misconstrued as judgment," she finally said, her tone softening. "I've lived on that edge, and I think we both fear misunderstanding." Emily grasped her coffee cup, drawing strength from its warm embrace. "But what if misunderstanding leads to insight?" she countered, leaning in with palpable intent. The conversation evolved, illuminating their contrasting paths, the privilege of one paralleled by the struggles of the other. Each exchanged story chipped away at the discomfort, revealing threads of shared humanity. As the afternoon faded, time drifted between them, an unrelenting reminder of their differing lives, stitched together by mutual respect. But lurking beneath the surface was the undeniable question: could this exchange redefine Emily's perceptions of herself, or would it merely underscore the chasms that still separated them? When Emily finally took stock of her current self, here she was, connecting with the affluent woman, battling her own insecurities head-on.
Their dialogue sparked introspection, and she questioned whether she was ready to embrace the insights she had gleaned, or would the shadows of judgment reemerge once again, cloaked in the guise of self-doubt. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting their discussion into golden hues, Emily felt the urgency to uncover what this experience meant for her own journey. The time had come to confront not just the woman before her, but also the judgment she held against herself. What lay ahead? Could she transform the insights gained into a source of resilience? The answer evaded her, yet the anticipation of discovery shimmered in the air like lingering sunlight. Everything was shifting, and the next step in her journey beckoned with tantalizing uncertainty. Emily left the cafe with a mixture of exhilaration and confusion swirling inside her. She had entered the conversation hoping for validation, yet what she discovered was a greater depth of understanding, not just of the affluent woman, but of herself. Each story shared had chipped away at the defensive layers she directed over the years.
As she wandered the bustling streets, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had stepped into a new phase of her life. The warm afternoon sun lazily bounced over her shoulder, urging her to contemplate the revelations from their meeting. Questions ricocheted in her mind. What parts of her self-worth had she tethered to external judgments? How had the fear of inadequacy clouded her ability to embrace her own journey? Despite her hesitations, there was a flicker of courage in her heart, igniting her desire to accelerate her personal growth. It was time to re-examine her position in the world, not in comparison to others, but as a unique entity. The thought was terrifying, yet liberating. She could delve into her creative projects with a newfound passion, free from the shackles of judgment and fear. As the days passed, Emily focused on the insights that had surfaced during her conversation. She returned to her journal, merging her thoughts with her artistic endeavors. Each entry became a canvas of ideas and explorations, allowing her to articulate her feelings of vulnerability, creativity, and ultimately, her sense of belonging. One evening, while leafing through the pages, she stumbled upon an idea that had lain dormant for too long. Why not curate a small exhibit featuring the personal stories of her readings? They wouldn't merely display her art, they'd serve as a platform for diverse voices, reflecting the intricate tapestry of human experience. It was a daring step, one that would open herself up once more to public scrutiny, but it felt right. Nervously, she began reaching out to those interested in contributing. Some responded with enthusiasm and gratitude, while others hesitated, their fears mirroring her own. With each connection she fostered, Emily's confidence burgeoned. She understood now that vulnerability, far from being a weakness, was a pathway to genuine connection. But as she ventured deeper into this project, a familiar shadow began to loom, creeping in as doubt whispered reminders of her encounter with the affluent woman. What if this new venture exposed her insecurities all over again? What if those she invited to collaborate viewed her as an imposter? She gripped her journal tightly, heart racing at the thought. Each sleepless night spent designing and refining her vision seemed to bring backlash from within. Despite moments of inspiration, she wrestled with a growing fear of judgment overshadowing her resolve. Would this endeavor serve to uplift others while revealing her own flaws? The time for reflection had transformed into a battleground of self-doubt and aspirations. One quiet night, after a long day of preparing for the project launch, Emily stared at her reflection in the mirror. She saw the tension written across her features, a reflection not only of her uncertainty, but of her determination. Yes, there were risks involved, but wasn't that exactly how progress was forged? Nothing of worth came without confrontation.
The intimate gathering of contributors was just days away, and the thought gripped at her gut. She felt the weight of expectations hanging above her once again. That cold fear and familiar discomfort threatened to bar her from sharing her journey, yet a flicker of excitement nestled deep in her heart, a reminder of how far she had come. What would she say, standing before them with her heart on her sleeve? Could she accept that fears were inevitable companions on the road to connection? As she wrestled with these questions, the door to a new chapter began to crack open. And yet, as Emily prepared for the unveiling of her project, an unexpected email brought a surge of anxiety crashing over her. Could this message from the affluent woman force her to reevaluate everything she had so courageously built? The moment of confrontation drew near, leaving her teetering on the edge of fear and possibility. As Emily settled into her small desk, the screen glowed with the email from the affluent woman. Even before opening it, a weight settled in her stomach. Her heart raced, caught between anticipation and dread. What could the message hold? An invitation to collaborate? Or perhaps it was a dismissal of her artistic endeavors, a reminder of the world she had tried to escape. With a deep breath, she clicked open the email. "Dear Emily," it began, echoing the polished tone she remembered. "My name is Claire, and I have to apologize for my previous demeanor. Perhaps I misjudged our conversation.
The words felt like a siren call, coaxing her fears to the surface. Misjudged? Did that mean she had been overly sensitive, or was it an acknowledgement of the vulnerability that they had both shared? In the message, Claire expressed a genuine interest in Emily's upcoming exhibit. She wanted to contribute a story of her own, a narrative about her childhood challenges and the assumptions that came with her wealth. As Emily read on, her heart raced. This unexpected gesture felt like a twist of fate. Claire wanted to open herself up just as Emily had begun to do. Motivated by their exchange, Emily's uncertainty evolved into a charged enthusiasm. Perhaps her project was not merely a means of creation, but a chance to build bridges with others who were struggling with their identities, much like she had. Could this collaboration lead her to discover her hidden competencies, the strength to dismantle the barrier she had erected? But even as the excitement surged, doubt reemerged, whispering cruelly. Claire's involvement could just as easily amplify her insecurities, casting shadows over Emily's worth as an artist. What if her narrative paled in comparison? What if others compared their experiences with hers, and she found them lacking? Each imaginative falter struck her with an uncomfortable recognition of her fragility. Finding solace within her journal, she wrote down her thoughts, expressing the raw anxieties that gnawed at her. "Am I ready for this?" she penned.
Is my voice truly valid? There was power in the act of laying her fears bare on the pages. It offered clarity, grounding her amidst chaos. In that moment, she began to recognize that this opportunity with Claire was less about competition and more about storytelling, a collective sharing of truths. As the days before the opening ticked away, Emily poured every ounce of herself into preparing the exhibition. It was no longer just a personal narrative, but a canvas for shared experiences. Each contributor's story enriched the tapestry of the exhibit, and she felt a growing sense of camaraderie with them. The fear that had accompanied her was now tempered by a burgeoning hope. However, as her confidence gained momentum, an unsettling thought intruded. Claire would be in attendance, and the thought of facing her brought a palpable tension. What if she saw through her facade? What if she questioned the authenticity of Emily's journey? With the opening night looming, Emily stood at the precipice of opportunity and fear, ready to confront not only her insecurities, but also the chance for connection wrapped in vulnerability. As she practiced her opening remarks, internalizing every sentence, she suddenly felt another shift. This was not merely about accepting others, it was also about accepting herself, flaws and all. She could weave her imperfections into the fabric of her journey, showcasing vulnerability as a strength. The night approached, each tick of the clock amplifying her resolve. In that moment of preparing for her audience, a final email notification pinged on her phone, and she instinctively knew it was from Claire again. Her pulse quickened. What if it held the key to understanding her own choices, bridging the gap between them just before the exhibit's unveiling? Summoning her courage, she opened the email, her heart pounding in rhythm with the realization that this developing dynamic could pivot everything as she stood at the brink of her own truth. Would this email reveal an unexpected bond, or would it shatter her growing confidence? Emily stood in her living room, heart racing as she read Claire's latest email. The subject line, "Looking forward to the exhibit," sent a rush of emotions through her. Claire had shared snippets of her own story, detailing the struggles of growing up in a privileged environment, burdened by expectations and the loneliness that wealth could create. It was a stark reminder that they were not so different after all, two women navigating their paths amid a complex web of insecurities. This was precisely what Emily had hoped for, a bridge connecting their worlds. In that moment, the doubts that had haunted her began to dissolve, melding with a newfound sense of purpose that surged within her. A voice inside whispered, "This is your moment of transformation." As the opening night of her exhibit approached, Emily transformed her anxiety into determination. She meticulously curated each story, each artwork, and carefully prepared her notes, knowing that every detail mattered. She wanted to create an environment where vulnerability could flourish, one where each participant could find strength in their narratives. The evening finally arrived, and Emily stood at the entrance of the gallery. The space was adorned with warmth, filled with art depicting the raw, unfiltered truths of those who had bravely shared their stories. As the first guests trickled in, she felt the electric buzz of possibility, tinged with unease. The gallery quickly filled. As she welcomed familiar faces, the reflection of those who believed in her journey ignited her spirit. Each smile filled her with the confidence to face Claire, whose presence loomed large in her mind. Would they connect? Would they share that moment of understanding she craved? When Claire finally arrived, fear gripped Emily's heart.
But as she approached with warmth and sincerity, something shifted. They embraced, and in that moment, all judgments melted away. Emily took a deep breath, her voice steady as she led the audience through the exhibit. Creating this space isn't just about the art. It's about the stories that forge connections, Emily began. Each piece embodies a journey, and our collective vulnerabilities make us human. As she spoke, she saw Claire nodding along with deep appreciation, signaling her support. The room filled with the sound of applause as each participant took their turn to share. Emily found solace in their words. Their honesty echoed back at her, fortifying her resolve. With each story shared, she watched as the audience became enveloped in a tide of empathy. Claire stepped forward to share her own narrative, unearthing personal struggles that resonated deeply with those around them. The vulnerability exhibited bridged the gap that once felt insurmountable. In that moment, Emily recognized profound growth within herself, not simply for having coordinated the event, but for creating meaningful connections, for learning to welcome authenticity instead of shying away from it. It struck her. Vulnerability was not a flaw, it was strength, a testament to the resilience that binds humanity. Days after the exhibit, those connections lingered in her heart. The attendees' passions and energy motivated her to continue developing her initiative. With Claire's support, they began plans for a series of workshops together, merging their experiences to foster creativity and healing within their community. Emily felt buoyant, invigorated by this unfolding path of collaboration. The clouds of doubt that had once encased her diminished, illuminated by trust and recognition of her ability to inspire. Claire's involvement helped her to understand that success was not confined to accolades, but derived from genuine connections and acknowledging shared humanity.
This journey had not only led her to help others, it had allowed her to reclaim her identity, redefine her worth, and embrace her capability to create change. Not bound by others' judgments, she stood proud in her achievements and transformation. Emily stepped into this new phase of her life with solid confidence, proof that she could conquer her fears and inspire others, a true leader in her own narrative. Now it's your turn. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that inspire growth and transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help others discover these powerful journeys. Comment below with your reactions and theories about Emily's incredible journey and her next steps. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see the power of vulnerability and reclaiming one's narrative. This is the moment to show your support.